Blizzard, this company that was once the Giga Chad of video game developers, to go from disaster class to disaster class until he became one of the most hated, one of the most despised. We're not going to go back in time to the ancestral era when Blizzard was a company made up of 4 guys in a garage known by the sadly prophetic name of Chaos Studio, or even to their prime moments, where each their game was a lesson in game design for this industry and where they revolutionized the RTS, then the hack and slash, then the MMORPG. No, we are going to start with the first tremors that made this colossus tremble, and which were the first flick in the collapse of this house of cards. In July 2008, just a few months before the release of the beloved second expansion of World of Warcraft, The New Tomb, Blizzard was bought by Activision. At the time, this was worrying news, but nothing more. Activision in itself is not yet seen as Satan himself. Call of Duty, for example, is not yet a video game series that has its arm deep in the wallets of its players. What worries us is Bobby Kotick. To give you an idea of the character, we are talking about a charming businessman who in 2006 sent a voice message to his assistant threatening to have her killed because she had done her job badly. But Bobby, the shareholders love him because when it comes to making money, you can't take that away from him. He's very strong. What is also worrying to a certain extent is the end of the studio's independence, which will now be obliged to report to shareholders, even if in reality, before the takeover by Activision, Vivendi was already the majority shareholder of Blizzard. A takeover that is therefore worrying, but without raising the crowds either. However, it is from there, under the reign of good old Bobby, that everything will change and the first earthquake will be felt. First, in the vast lands of Azeroth, Blizzard's golden goose World of Warcraft. In November 2008, WoW was at its prime. With 12.5 million subscribers, the extension Wrath of the Lich King is in full swing. What we forget to say when we mention this titanic peak is also that logically the following month, for the first time in its history, Blizzard will see its players unsubscribe little by little. From Wrath of the Lich King onwards, WoW starts to change. Blizzard wanted to make the game easier to access to attract fresh blood, and we'll see the beginnings of what it will become, with the addition of LFG dungeons, which allow instant access via a simple click. But it is with Cataclysm that this direction will materialize. The entire world of Azeroth is being reworked under the awakening of Deathwing, and it is adapted for easier and faster leveling. We will also note the arrival of the LFR raids. This time, same system as Wrath of the Lich King's dungeons, but for raids. From Cataclysm, it is a hemorrhage of subscribers that will be felt, since it will be followed by a MOP that is little understood, where we will witness 1.3 million subscribers lost on the second quarter of the extension. But it was Warlords of Draenor that, in 2014, marked the real turning point in WoW. Only 3 raids in the entire expansion, and a final patch of 400 days will hurt the subscriber counter very badly, but it is above all the addition of the Sesame and the WoW token microtransactions that will reveal to the heroes of Azeroth the greedy face of Blizzard. After losing more than 5 million players in 5 months at the release of Warlords of Draenor, Blizzard decided to stop publishing monthly subscriber reports. Player count is no longer the most important metric, because with the addition of these new microtransactions, what matters now is what the game reports. Faced with these changes that no one had asked for, some players disappointed by what WoW has become decide to create their own version of the game as they liked it, the basic WoW, without the expansions, and the most popular of its private servers is called Nostalrius. More than 800,000 players are there, and for Blizzard, according to them, that's 800,000 subscriptions stolen from them. They see it as an affront to the beautiful new expansions they produce, and will issue them a formal notice. Nostalrius will close its doors on April 10th, 2016. The shutdown of this server obviously did not increase subscriptions to WoW retail. On the contrary, it rather had the effect of enraging a community that has always asked Blizzard to leave the vanilla servers and which has always been refused. Following this, a petition gathered more than 200,000 signatures for the opening of official vanilla servers, and the developers of Nostalrius went so far as to go to Blizzard's offices to offer them an 80-page document on how to recreate classic servers. Blizzard, however, never wanted to work with them, and it would be more than 3 years before WoW Classic was released. But personally, the day my confidence was really lost was October 30th, 2019. A few months earlier, Blizzard made available 2 toys which could be purchased for real money for a limited time, specifying that a portion of the sales of its toys would contribute to the cash price of MDI and AWC. They make it clear that 25% of the revenue from its toys will help increase the amount offered to the winners of these 2 tournaments, knowing that Blizzard normally puts $500,000 into these 2 events. It's promising. And a few days after the end of sales, we learn that Blizzard made $2,600,000 with these toys. 25% of this amount. That's $660,000 that will increase the cash price. The hype is titanic for fans of these tournaments. Combined with the usual $500,000, we should have more than $1,160,000 in cash prizes, except that Blizzard announces that the total amount will be $660,000. Instead of adding them to the usual $500,000, they just estimated that $660,000 was more than enough. By justifying this via a linguistic pirouette, apparently we would have misunderstood what was said in the announcement of this event, and thus, they will not put a single penny into their own competition. Call it what you want, I call it theft, and I have to say that as a WoW player, my already fragile confidence really took a hit here. But Blizzard is not short, and on the other hand, Diablo players also had plenty to worry about. It's 2012, 12 years after the release of Diablo 2, the next installment is finally out, and it's one of the worst video game launches ever. Error 37 looping for all connection attempts. The servers are just overloaded and very few people can access them, especially since Diablo 3 forces an internet connection for all its game modes. While many have only bought the game to do the single-player campaign, players are enraged. They have paid for a game, but just don't have access to it, and will turn to consumer agencies. In France alone, UFC Courvoisier has collected more than 1,500 complaints in just 4 days. The funny thing is that when they were finally able to connect, they were treated to a decent game, but nothing more. And in particular, a feature that will disgust many people, the real money auction house, which allows, as its name suggests, to buy objects for hard cash. I remind you that it's 2012, microtransactions are not yet too democratized in video games, but on top of that, on Diablo, it makes the whole concept of the game collapse on itself, a hack and slash based on the farming of objects. In short, the launch was catastrophic overall, and the reception of the game was half-hearted, but that was just a snippet of the shitstorm that awaited Diablo players 6 years later. BlizzCon, the highlight of the year for all Blizzard fans, and it was here that in 2018, the worst video game announcement I've personally seen took place. While all fans of the license were just waiting for Diablo 4, obviously. It was the infamous Diablo Immortal that was announced, a mobile game that, at the time, was not even planned to have a PC support. Suffice to say that it's the discontent that is growing among Diablo players, and Blizzard is being booed at its own convention. At the same time, who is really surprised? Because placing yourself in the growing mobile game market, fine, but was the Diablo license the right choice? The video game that redefined the action RPG, the license squarely made for hardcore PC gamers, I'm not sure. In any case, Diablo players are not happy with a mobile game, to say the least. But, hey, apparently it only surprised Blizzard. Following this real clown fiesta, the game will be released 4 years later with a PC port finally, but also accompanied by a nice 0.3 out of 10 on Metacritic from players, and among the worst monetization practices ever seen, which would almost make Star Wars Battlefront look like something acceptable. If you've been familiar with Warcraft 3's online mode, you've probably already set foot on Defense of the Ancients. Out of hubris or simply lack of vision, Blizzard has completely ignored the success of this game mode created by players. The three people who created it will be recruited by Riot and Valve to bring to life this kind of game that is now called MOBAs, League of Legends, and Dota 2. Following a dubious lawsuit during which Blizzard gave Valve the rights to the Dota name, it was in 2011 that Blizzard All-Stars was revealed at BlizzCon and will be the foundation of a MOBA made in Blizzard, which will finally be released 4 years later under the name Heroes of the Storm. After an alpha that I personally soiled as if my life depended on it, it was in June 2015 that the game was launched, and quite quickly, the feedback is rather excellent. It's beautiful. The heroes have a really original design, even wacky for some. There is no painful last hit system. There is no purchase of items. The XP is shared between the whole team, and there is a lot of fighting. And that's promising, especially since Blizzard announces the HGC as soon as the game is released to the Heroes Global Championship, with more than $1 million at stake in the first season of competition. The game was clearly less technical than a Dota 2 or a LoL, but it seemed to be wanted in the direction taken, and Heroes, who arrived late on the MOBA market, could have grown. It clearly had the potential to probably not take the crown of LoL or Dota, but become this MOBA number 3 very solid. Except that only 1 year after the release of the game, Blizzard is refocusing its entire communication budget on its new baby, Overwatch, which will overshadow this MOBA, which is still in its infancy. It almost gave the impression that Blizzard itself had already moved on, and it would be proven in December 2018 when J. Allen Brack officially announced the end of Blizzard's investment in the esports of this promising MOBA. Players, casters, and team staff find themselves out of work overnight, and a MOBA without esport is complicated. Amateur leagues such as the CCL were formed, but the vast majority of teams collapsed and players fled to more welcoming lands. The pace of content releases will also collapse. Blizzard already seems to have thrown in the towel, and in the space of 3.5 years, only 3 new heroes will be released until July 2022, when the game officially goes into maintenance mode. No more content will be added. The amateur leagues are closing their doors in turn, and even the CCL bowed out a few days ago. On May 3rd, 2016, Overwatch was released, and its success was immediate. A financial success as well as a success of esteem, Overwatch revolutionized the aging genre of the hero shooter, and this colorful and affordable FPS would launch many careers. It was an absolute hype when it was released, and during its first year of life, we are talking about 9.7 million players during the open beta, and 20 million at launch. The Overwatch League, which accompanied the debut of the game, also made a titanic launch, and more than 300,000 people attended the coronation of the London Spitfire, the first champions of this competition. After a strong first year, the future of Overwatch looked bright, but that was underestimating Blizzard's ability to spend years building a beautiful ship powered by strong licenses, and managing to put enough pickaxe in the hull in record time to sink them, because after this year of domination, Overwatch is starting to weaken, seasonal events are repurposed, and controversial features like roll queue are added, making queues very long, especially for DPS players. The price of a ticket to put a team in the Overwatch League 3 times higher than the most watched esport in the world is slowly starting to look like a huge speculative bubble, and it will be reaffirmed when the broadcasting rights of this event are transferred from Twitch to YouTube, and the number of viewers begins an unprecedented descent. But according to many, what really killed Overwatch was Brigitte's exit. This character is special. First of all, she's too strong and has everything in her kit for relatively little effort, since she's not really an FPS character who needs to have a good aim. But Brigitte's release will lead to an infamous meta, which will dominate Overwatch for a far too long time. The GOATS meta: 3 tanks, 3 healers, and no DPs, the sidereal non-fun that will have several effects. First, a free fall in the number of viewers of the Overwatch League, because apart from a stream in the only sleeping category, there is nothing less interesting to watch than a GOATS versus GOATS match. But also the fact that DPS players, the superstars who create hype because they know how to click heads, find themselves out of work, and for players with such abilities, the future future seemed much brighter on the side of Riot's new baby, Valorant, and there will be a mass exodus of pro players. But it would be dishonest to say that it was Valorant's announcement that drove the nails into Overwatch's coffin, because in reality it's Overwatch itself, with the announcement of its second installment, Overwatch 2, and its particular focus on PvE has made people cringe. But what will hurt a lot is the announcement that no more content will be added to the first opus until the undetermined release of the second. A masterful communication error, since as of this date in September 2022, Overwatch 2 has not yet been released, and the last time a hero was added to the first installment was Echo 2 years earlier. Logically, with the abandonment of the first one to focus on a second one that no one asked for, and that looks much more like a very big update than a new game, let's be honest. The number of players has dropped drastically, and with Valorant now very well established, the hope of seeing a revival of Overwatch with the two has faded by the day. So far, we've seen how good Blizzard is at spending years creating a stylish turbo game and getting it up in the air in record time via a series of very bad decisions. But here, they did very well. With Warcraft 3 Reforged, they managed to disgrace the very first video game I had in my hands by achieving the feat of releasing a remake that was not as good as the original in every way, 18 years after its release. The promised features are not there, the remake is visually not up to the mark, the in-game cutscenes unveiled a few months earlier have nothing to do with what we really have in our hands, there is no ranked play system, and the game is as unstable as a Vietnam veteran, which creates some pretty funny situations during the few tournaments organized. Warcraft 3 Reforged will get a solid 0.6 out of 10 on Metacritic from players, and a nice nickname that will follow it again today. In 2019, in Asia, in the autonomous territory of Hong Kong, the world watched speechless as citizens protested against an extradition bill. In short, this law would allow mainland China to interfere with Hong Kong's legal system, which until then had been completely independent. This law, if it were to come into force, would endanger first the citizens of Hong Kong, but also all people who stay in or transit there. In October, during the Asia-Pacific edition of the Grand Masters 2019 competition, the player Blitzchung was invited to speak after his victory, and he took the opportunity to show his support for the protesters, using their slogan, "Free Hong Kong." Very quickly, we learned via a press release that Blizzard's hastened to ban him, to withdraw all his winnings, and also to ban the two presenters, who had not asked for anything, by specifying that Blitzchung's comments violated the rules, and that Blizzard's networks are not a political platform. Well, it's not political when it suits them, apparently. So why such a vehement reaction from Blizzard? The reason is quite simple. In fact, Blizzard has always had a special relationship with China. In 2005, they secured an arrangement with the CCP, the Chinese Single Party, in order to be able to release WoW on this sector. It is one of the first Western video game companies to have perceived the potential of the Chinese market. They must therefore obey strict rules imposed by the Chinese government to continue to have the right to publish their games there. In just a few hours, it was a scandal. Many players announced that they would no longer spend money in the publisher's stores. Some of the employees covered the company with pro-Hong Kong slogans, and thousands of memes appeared on the networks. Players have also made Mei, one of the Overwatch characters, look like a supporter of the Free Hong Kong movement in order to block Overwatch in China. As a result, very small apologies were made, but it was not until the American Congress itself asked them to reduce the punishments at the meeting of Blitzchung and the two casters that their sentence was finally lightened. July 2021 was the final blow in a company with an already weakened brand image. The state of California filed a lawsuit against Blizzard. This is the complicated part. I will explain it to you in my own words, and by making big shortcuts like a Wario player on the Koopa Troopa beach. There are two main facts for which Blizzard is involved. The first is the work culture that reigns in the premises, Apparently, working at Blizzard is a great experience, except for anyone who has made the big mistake of being born with two X chromosomes. Within the company, there are reports of harassment, moral harassment in particular against women. Obviously, the guys arrive at work more or less drunk, which between us could explain some recent features of WoW, but that's not the point. They play video games for hours and delegate their task to female employees, who suddenly have to work more while being paid less, the great classic. In addition to this, there are questionable comments about the bodies of the women employed and heavy jokes all day long. There is even a mysterious breast milk thief who has been on the run for months, but that's a story for another video. In short, the work environment is ultra unhealthy, and the investigation also revealed that management was aware of all these practices and would have done nothing to prevent them. The second fact that implicates them is just as terrifying, if not more so. In April 2017, during a company seminar supposed to strengthen cohesion and team spirit, Carrie Moynihan ended her life. She's a 32-year-old woman who held a position as a finance manager and had a romantic relationship with one of her superiors, who, moreover, realizing the potential consequences and the scandal to come, openly lied to investigators about the nature of her relationship with her subordinate. In fact, during a party that took place shortly before Carrie's death, a photo of her private parts supposedly circulated by her boyfriend would have been circulated in many hands, and a lot of harassment ensued. Greg Restituto, the boyfriend in question, stopped working at Blizzard in May 2017, only a month after Carrie's death. During the investigations that followed the 2021 complaint, it was learned that Activision Blizzard had refused to give access to Carrie and Greg's laptops and smartphones to the relevant authorities. Following these allegations, Activision Blizzard shares are skyrocketing, and obviously the shitstorm that ensued on the networks was unprecedented. If Blizzard's brand image was already weakened, it is now annihilated. Many content creators decided not to release Activision Blizzard games on July 28th as a sign of support, and the employees themselves, for their part, organized a one-day strike on the same day. Physically, in front of Blizzard's offices, nearly 350 people peacefully demonstrated their support for the victims. Other big names in the video game industry have taken the opportunity to step into the breach. Riot Games and Warner Brothers have also shown their support. Faced with the pressure and the magnitude of the phenomenon, good old Bobby had to drop off his 8th yacht in the garage to issue a press release during the day. He apologized on behalf of the company and announced a series of measures to curb his toxic behavior. Some that are not forward, such as sanctions that will be taken and a better listening to employees, and others that make people laugh softly, such as the change of some muddy jokes and bear paintings and WoW as if it had the slightest connection. In March 2022, we finally know a little more. A financial agreement was signed and 37 people were dismissed for non-compliance with the company's code of conduct. This financial agreement is an out-of-court deal avoiding a long and painful trial and amounts to $18 million. This tidy sum is more or less used to bury harassment cases and will also be used to compensate all employees deemed to be victims of it. It was also revealed that managers now have to take new training courses on workplace harassment and all other forms of discrimination, and that's about it. Clearly satisfied, Bobby Kotick commented on the end of the lawsuits by explaining that he wanted to make Activision Blizzard, hold on tight, a model for the industry. As a result, legally speaking, Blizzard will never be found innocent or guilty since there has been no trial and therefore no judgment. The future, however, looks more positive than the past. Microsoft was able to buy Blizzard on sale after this affair, and we hope that they will succeed in giving them the means to restore their image. Spoiler alert, not at all more failures, but we'll see that in another video. That's how in the space of a few years we explode a brand image, a tutorial offered by Blizzard Entertainment. Well, more seriously, you can imagine that not everyone is a demon at Blizzard. Unfortunately, the big decisions often belong to the wrong people. I hope you liked the video. I'll let you put your opinion in the comments. Subscribe, it's free. See you soon.